20-hour journey from Singapore to O'Hare International with a layover in Taipei was barely better than economy class, even on my birthday. I wasn't fazed by returning to Chicago for a tough meeting with our international stocks head and shares trading desk. What worried me was anticipating what awaited me at home. We landed just after 8:30 a.m., and I took a shuttle to the nearby Chicago Sheraton Suites Hotel. Having booked the room the night before, it was ready for immediate check-in. After dropping my belongings, I showered and hit the gym. I worked out for an hour, then took a long, hot shower, followed by a cold rinse to wake up fully. Despite the chilly April weather in Chicago, I endured the cold until my teeth chattered, then warmed up with hot water. Feeling refreshed, I went to the restaurant for an American breakfast I'd missed for months. After devouring pancakes, scrambled eggs, bacon, and sausage drenched in maple syrup, and 4 cups of coffee, I headed to my 10:30 appointment at J.P. Morgan on Dearborn Avenue. I took the elevator to the 8th floor, showed my ID, and was escorted to a small conference room. They kept me waiting for over 17 minutes, during which I didn't move a muscle. From my trips to Asia, I learned to show no fear or weakness. Joe Rutledge, VP of International Stock and Commodities Traders, and Samuel Young, our corporate lawyer, eventually entered. Their presence signaled someone was getting fired, and it was me. "Adam," Joe began without a handshake, motioning me to sit. The confrontation began. "What happened in Singapore?" Joe demanded. "We sent you to stabilize things, and you approved a $300 million purchase of a new company's stock with no solid data." "Yes." "Yes to what?" "Yes." His face reddened. "Explain." "It's in my report. The CEO and management team are top-notch with 200 years of experience. The project, 50 years in the making, is confirmed by Deloitte and KPMG. The aquaculture project is technologically advanced and has real potential." "Then why is their share price falling?" he asked. "It went public at $17 a share, and now it's $9.55, and you bought more?" "Yes, because it will rebound. If it reaches $25, we'll profit significantly." "Joe, we own 25% of the shares, making us the largest shareholder." "In a failing company," he retorted, "because competitors are short-selling to sink the company or buy it cheaply. We need to stand our ground." "It's a failure," he said. "We need to trade on confidence and maintain a positive risk ratio." "It's all in my report," I reiterated. "Your report is wishful thinking," he said. "The council has approved my recommendation. You're out." Samuel offered me 3 months' salary and nearly 30 days of accrued vacation, totaling almost 5 months of pay. They also cashed in my stock options, bringing my total payout to nearly $800,000, but leaving me with a tarnished reputation and bleak job prospects. By 2 a.m., I had signed all the forms, rolled my 401k into an IRA, returned all company materials, and was escorted out. Standing on the sidewalk with an empty satchel, I felt like I might collapse. I rushed to catch a cab back to the hotel, imagining strangers watching me die on the street. In my room, I mixed whiskey with 7-Up and ice, a sacrilege I needed. I sat down to think. At 42, I was too young to retire, but unsure if I could start over. I decided I needed courage. I bought a new laptop, installed the necessary software, and began working. I transferred $50,000 from savings and liquidated some investments, preparing to move over $1,200,000 into an offshore trading account called Blue Sky International. By 9 a.m., I ordered a hamburger and beer from room service. My phone had been off for 36 hours. Exhausted, I decided to relax, watch the news, and avoid dealing with everything. Eventually, jet lag caught up with me and I fell asleep. The next morning I had an early breakfast and turned on my phone. It was flooded with messages. "Help Dad! Mom is having a breakdown," from Dean and Katie. "What's going on with Jean?" from my dad. Birthday wishes from Jean's parents, my kids, and Team Singapore, but nothing from Jean. It felt like I didn't exist. I caught the 8:30 flight to Springfield and arrived home to chaos. The living room was a mess with games, soda cans, and plates everywhere. The kitchen sink was clogged and the dishwasher and trash can were overflowing. The laundry room was piled with dirty clothes. I spent 3 hours cleaning and organizing, noticing 2 empty wine bottles with different lipstick marks in the living room. Our bedroom needed fresh sheets and ventilation. The kids' rooms were dirty but slightly better. Finally, I went to my office to check the Southeast Asia aquaculture stock. It had dropped to $9.37, almost 2 points down for the day. Now it was time to see if I had the courage to enter the market. I called my dad. My mom had died 5 years ago from bosom cancer. We talked about Jean. He said she seemed sad and depressed recently. She was heartbroken for no clear reason. I checked our bank transactions and home phone messages but found nothing unusual. After folding clothes, I checked for dinner options and found little. I reconnected the battery to my Audi A6, started it, and went to the supermarket for groceries to make Thai green curry and jasmine rice. I boiled rice with water, coconut milk, and ginger for flavor. I stir-fried chicken strips with zucchini, Asian eggplant, lemongrass, garlic, Asian basil, and cilantro. I added coconut milk, green curry paste, lime zest and juice, fish sauce, and a bit of sugar. I garnished the dish with spring onions, coriander, and basil leaves, set the table, and poured a beer. Jean arrived, and the kids ran inside, excited to see me. I hugged and kissed them, telling them how much I missed them. Katie cried in my arms, and Dean, more reserved, hugged me too. Jean watched us with a wistful look, then kissed me gently. "Welcome home, Adam," she said without much enthusiasm. "That smells nice. What is it?" "Thai green curry," I replied. Dean and Katie were curious. "It smells really good," Dean said, hugging me again. "Go clean up for dinner," Jean instructed. Afterward, she hugged and kissed me. "You look exhausted, Adam. Why are you back so soon?" "I got fired," I admitted. She blushed, fumbling for words. "We'll figure something out." "But what about you?" She seemed distant, more like an acquaintance than my wife. "Are you okay?" "It's work," she said, trying to smile. "The market's down, and there's a lot of pressure at MRE." She gestured to show the extent of the pressure. The kids returned, and we gathered for dinner. I served the meal, poured wine for Jean and me, and Dean had Mountain Dew while Kathy had water. We ate together for the first time in 4 months. I shared stories about Singapore and team-building activities like dragon boat races and combat archery. After dinner, Dean and Kathy surprised me with a wrapped present. "Happy birthday, Dad," they said, bringing tears to Jean's eyes. I kissed my kids as Jean exclaimed, "Oh my God, Adam, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot." I resisted reminding her of the gold diamond earrings I got her for her birthday and focused on the kids. I opened my present, a Brothers in Arms set. I loved that show and had always wanted the CD collection. I kissed the kids again, our smiles matching from the joy of giving and receiving. Jean, embarrassed and remorseful, promised to get me a gift the next day. "You don't have to," I said. "Being home with my family is all I need." Dean and Katie hugged me again, saying, "Love you, Daddy." We talked at the table for over an hour, but eventually the kids had to do their homework while Jean and I cleaned up the kitchen. "What's going on, Jean? You're not yourself." She hesitated, then admitted, "I don't know, Adam. I'm depressed. You've always traveled so much, and the last time was too long. We hardly live the same life." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I feel lost." I hugged her, and after some resistance, she let me hold her as she sobbed softly. She was right. My job had kept me away for years. We had agreed to make sacrifices for an early retirement, but it was taking a toll. Jean suggested I spend time with the kids. I helped Katie with her homework, did the same with Dean, then tucked Katie into bed. Dean confided, "Mom's not okay, Dad. She's crying and not doing much around the house. I think she's having a nervous breakdown." There were tears in his eyes. "Please fix it, Dad." I nodded, though I had no idea what to do. As I went downstairs, I heard Jean on the phone. She ended the call abruptly when she saw me. "Who was that?" I asked. "One of the girls from the office," she replied, looking defiant. She seemed angry but wouldn't discuss it. Exhausted, I checked the Singapore Stock Exchange. CA was trading at $9.90, a slight increase. I went upstairs, waited for Jean to finish in the bathroom, then got ready for bed. When I reached for her, she tensed, but then pressed against me. "Please, just hold me," she whispered. I held her for a long time, feeling something was fundamentally wrong. Was it the long separation? Had she fallen out of love or in love with someone else? Was she sick? These thoughts swirled until I finally fell asleep. I woke up at 4:30 feeling tired and sick. I went for a run and planned to buy melatonin to reset my body clock. After an hour, I returned to find Jean gone, leaving a note asking me to feed the kids and take them to school. I checked my bank account. Saw the money from JP Morgan had cleared and transferred it to my offshore account. I checked the CA shares, which were now trading at $8.99, slowly declining. I had to choose between fixing my marriage or securing my financial future. Could I do both? I spent time with Dean and Kathy, asking about their activities while I was away. They mentioned spending time with Gene's boss, Anthony Miller, and his daughter Evelyn doing things like miniature golf and movies. Dean noticed my concern and defended the time spent with Evelyn, saying they felt like one big happy family. I assured them I was glad they enjoyed themselves and proposed a summer vacation. They were excited, and I hugged and kissed them before driving them to school. Then I called George Tallis, my old mentor, to discuss my situation. George, still a registered broker, agreed to review the CA prospectus I sent him. Later, I stopped by a pharmacy near St. John's Hospital and saw Gene and Evelyn Miller leaving the hospital, looking distraught. They seemed deeply connected in their grief. I wondered if Gene or Evelyn was sick or if they were mourning a mutual acquaintance. The sight left me unsettled, but I proceeded to my meetings. At my first meeting, Julian Knowles said he'd discuss the CA investment with his club. At the second, Aaron Goldstein quickly agreed to invest $10 million. After the paperwork, George called, saying he had interested investors, and we agreed on a sliding commission structure. I then called my dad to discuss the CA opportunity, and he decided to invest $100,000. When I explained Jean's behavior, he suggested it resembled someone in mourning. We ruled out her parents and siblings, considering her cousins were distant. Dad then gave me the number of a private investigator they had used for insurance fraud cases. I went home, called my contacts in Singapore and Southeast Asia for updates, and recreated the risk assessment profile for CA. The results matched my report. Rational numbers, a solid management team, and an early-stage project. Importantly, the management team had invested their own money, strengthening my position. Everything was set for SGX to open, and I would start trading. While waiting, I contacted a private investigator, Clarence Williams, who had a slow southern accent but a sharp mind. He required a $5,000 advance and would start the next day. I drank coffee, waiting for the time to pass. Dean and Kathy came home late from sports practice, and I spent time with them but explained my important business. Jean arrived, looking tired but more determined. "I bought Chinese food on the way home," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "Are you working?" "Hi, Jean." No affectionate words came from her, so I didn't respond either. "I have to work tonight from about 7. "Okay, I have a present for your birthday," she said, handing me a small gift-wrapped package. The card read, "Happy birthday, Adam. Love, Jean." Inside was a bottle of Hugo Boss aftershave. I thanked her, and she kissed my dry lips. We ate as a family. Dean and Kathy talked about their day. Jean mentioned some changes during my absence, like her boss, Anthony Miller, converting his house into a shelter for misused teens. I was surprised, as I thought he was more of a country club type. "His wife Lynn started it before she died," Jean said. "He used to use empty houses he owned, but now wants a permanent establishment." "Why now?" I asked. She became impassive. "Now the opportunity has presented itself," she said, nodding. "That's a great idea. Springfield could use it," I said, smiling. She smiled back, and we cleaned up together. Despite my pleasant expression, I sensed she was hiding something. After cleanup, I told her I was going to work in my office. With an hour before trading opened in Singapore, I sat at my desk, thinking about my marriage and trying to keep my sanity. Jean and I had once been compatible in every way, but the past few years had been difficult due to my frequent traveling. Usually we planned for my return, leading to mini honeymoons, but not this time. The situation made me angry. In Singapore and South Asia, many women sought relationships with foreign men for various reasons, and I was hit on daily. However, I turned them down because I was married to a woman I loved. But recent events made me question our relationship. Reflecting on any warning signs, I realized that aside from a breakdown in communication over the past few weeks, there wasn't much. But now I had to focus on the work at hand. When the Singapore market opened, California was trading at $8.49. With over $30 million to invest, I cautiously began buying stocks. Despite my purchases, the price kept falling as investors tried to offload their shares. I suspected my old company was dumping shares. I kept buying, expecting the price to stabilize, but it plummeted to $5.61. With our $30 million, We bought over 10% of the shares, allowing us to appoint someone to the board of directors. I called George and we celebrated over whiskey, an 18-year-old J.P. Wiser's for me, and a 10-year-old Bully bourbon for George. Our purchases encouraged other investors to buy at the bargain price, and by the time I logged off, the price had climbed to $8.72, stranding short sellers. It was almost 2 a.m. I quickly cleaned up and went to bed, finally passing out from the melatonin pills. The next morning, I woke up late. Dean and Kathy were finishing breakfast, and Jean was on the phone saying, "Time is of the essence." She ended the call when she saw me. "Working?" Jean shrugged exaggeratedly and poured me a cup of coffee. "You must have been up late." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Did the trade go well?" I mimicked her shrug, keeping my worries about CA to myself. "It's still early. We'll have to wait and see." "Okay." She kissed my cheek. "You look tired. I'll take the kids to school." She left, calling out to Dean and Kathy. They shouted, "Bye and love you, Daddy," as they left. I poured another cup and headed to my office. I'm pleased to see the stock closed at $10.14 after a late rally. It was time to stabilize the stock away from hostile games. I washed my face and started emailing and making calls, first checking the Miller Real Estate website. It promoted its social responsibility program, New Horizons House, helping troubled teens. I found Anthony Miller's Facebook, filled with pictures of cars, vacations, and a recent corporate event photo with Jean holding his hand, looking at him instead of the photographer. It was curious but not definitive. Jean's Facebook was mostly old family photos, with nothing much recent. Evelyn's Facebook showed many pictures with Jean over the years, some with Anthony too, but nothing inappropriate. Her recent posts were cryptic about life and prayers. I called Clarence Williams to expedite the investigation, but he said it would take time. I called my father, who advised against jumping to conclusions and to let the experts handle it. He told me to be patient. I was torn. Should I try to fix my marriage, risking more heartache if I was being played, or do nothing and regret it later? I called a lawyer who advised that fixing the marriage was usually better than divorce. I had one more idea. I contacted a former colleague of Jean's, Chad, who owed me a favor. He agreed to meet for lunch. At Red Robin, he walked in looking every bit the realtor in his golf shirt, chinos, and dockers. After small talk over burgers, I got down to business. "So, you're fishing for information, Adam?" Chad laughed. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm trying to understand something about MRE. Something's been bothering me." Chad turned serious. "Everything changed when Tony lost his wife to cancer. He lost his drive for a while, but his daughter took over, and he eventually found his footing again." He looked at me shrewdly. "Your wife." She became very close to him, often referred to as his office wife. I gestured for him to continue, my throat tight. "I didn't see anything inappropriate, but office gossip can be cruel. Tony, Evelyn, and your wife spent a lot of time together. But you weren't home much, were you?" I shrugged. "We talked about it without adding anything new." Chad was about to leave when he remembered something. "Did you know Anthony was rumored to have cancer?" We said goodbye and I called St. John's Hospital, asking for Anthony Miller's room. He was in the oncology ward. I paid for lunch and headed home with a lot to think about. That evening, I went outside with whiskey and a charcuterie board. Jean joined me with a glass of wine. "Can we talk, Adam?" "Shoot." "You went on the MRE website," she accused. "Why does it matter?" "Why did you go to the company's website? And I assume you've checked everyone's Facebook pages too." She glared at me, daring me to argue. We'd been married long enough for me to recognize the signs. "What did you expect to find?" "Exactly what I found." "And what was that?" "Why are you questioning me, Jean? Social media isn't private." I laughed, and she blushed. "Evelyn said you checked her Instagram." "Really?" "Yeah." She tried to stay calm. "Why are you acting like this?" "How? Like this, why?" I blew smoke in her direction, knowing she hated it. She waved it away, spilling wine on her blouse. "Please stop, Adam." She began to cry. Normally I would have hugged her, but not this time. "Why are you crying, Jean?" "You're upsetting me with your behavior, Adam." She grew louder, but I let out more smoke. "Who are you?" I asked. She struggled for words. "I am your wife, Adam Carter. That's who I am." I stepped back as she gasped and ran into the house. I finished my drink and went to my office. CA's stock was rising to $11.92. George and I agreed it was a trend, not a spike. I monitored the market, noticing CA was the only stock with significant upward movement. A JP Morgan team member admitted they dumped half the stock at 0.50 cents on the dollar. My former boss, Joe Ratledge, suggested holding the rest as the trend looked positive. We laughed. He hinted that JP Morgan might rehire me and fire Ratledge. That night I slept on the couch in my office. The next morning I saw CA closed at $13. The trend continued and our investors doubled their money. If it reached $25, we'd see a 300% profit. I made breakfast, drank coffee, and called the kids to eat, ignoring Jean all morning. After dropping them off at school, I went to the gym and then to IHOP for a late breakfast. I made some calls and had a 2-hour meeting with George when I got home. We discussed starting a combined brokerage with offices in Springfield and Chicago. George would work on the structure and equity while I developed a market plan. I was drafting the plan when Jean came in alone. I left Kathy and Dean at the Beckers for the night. We need to talk. She poured me a bourbon and herself a glass of wine. We sat in the living room, and I waited for her to speak first. I don't know what you think I've been doing while you've been away, Adam. I haven't thought about anything yet. Well, you're being very disrespectful and ugly to me. Is that how you feel? I raised an eyebrow. Disrespectful? She nodded, then apologized. You're not home anymore. We're like two strangers. So after 17 years, we're strangers because I've been gone for 4 months. All the Skypes, texts, and phone calls didn't matter. There was a lot of pressure on me, and you were far away. She wiped her tears. But you're my husband, and I'm your wife, and that's all that matters. She stood up and walked away. I sat there, sipping my bourbon, wondering if she'd lost her mind. I heard her on the phone, then the murmur of water from the bathtub. Later, she came downstairs wearing a gray dress, black shoes, and a string of pearls I'd bought her. Go take a shower and get dressed, she said. I'll make a reservation at Chesapeake Seafood Restaurant. I got ready in 15 minutes, ignoring my suspicion that she was on the phone again. At the restaurant, she had a gin and tonic, and I ordered a Singapore gin sling. We talked about the kids over Chardonnay and appetizers. She seemed unconcerned about me losing my job. You're one of the smartest people I know, Adam. I believe you'll find a job quickly. She smiled at me. She had no idea our future depended on CA. The evening improved as we discussed friends, parents, and everyday topics. When our main courses arrived, I ordered the captain's platter, and she had lobster. She treated me to wine, and we enjoyed each other's company. If she was having an affair, she hid it well. We finished our meal and went home. I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. Jean was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, and English muffins. We ate together, discussing chores around the house. After breakfast, she went to pick up Dean and Kathy. I was in the backyard when my phone rang. It was Clarence Williams. Can you talk? He asked, and my heart sank. We arranged to meet at a downtown coffee shop. I left my work, cleaned up, and met him. He waved when he saw me. He was nothing like I expected. Unlike the detectives on TV, he was a small, unassuming man, no more than 5'7", thin, gray-haired, and balding. He wore dark pants, a shirt, and an old sports jacket, and even his shoes looked like they were from Walmart. He probably drove a Toyota. However, his high-end cell phone didn't match his outward appearance, and his firm handshake revealed his true nature. He got straight to the point. Mr. Carter, we didn't catch your wife at a hotel or in any secret meetings, he said, holding up a hand to stop me from interrupting. But we have ample evidence she's been having an affair with her boss, Anthony Miller, for at least 2 years. It's an open secret in the office. His daughter Evelyn knows and facilitates it. Your wife often left the kids with friends to spend weekends with him when you were away. His words hit hard and my pulse quickened. My hands clutched the table as if I were having a heart attack. Hearing the truth from a stranger was devastating. Clarence continued, but I could barely hear him. Miller has been diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer and has only a few months to live. What? I asked, trying to process. He's undergoing therapy, but it's not working. He has metastatic pancreatic cancer. This confirmed what Chad had hinted at. Jean's behavior suddenly made sense. She was mourning the man she loved and trying to cope with his impending pass away. I shared my thoughts with Clarence, needing someone to talk to. Clarence's next words confirmed my initial impression of his depth. Cheaters often try to minimize their actions by saying it was just physical engaging, but that's nonsense, Mr. Carter. They're invested in the relationship. Women need to feel loved. Long-term affairs are about more than physical engaging. They involve sharing experiences, hopes, and dreams. They develop a personal language and justify their actions by finding faults in their spouses. I was devastated. My wife was in a relationship with another man, giving him her full attention and enjoying the good times without the burdens of daily life. He provided her with the excitement missing from our marriage. We talked more and agreed to pause the investigation while I considered my next steps. After he left, I sat and pondered my life. One thing was clear. My marriage was over. The idea of staying together for the children no longer made sense. As difficult as it was to face, I knew that many children in the U.S. live in separated or divorced families, and mine would be no different. I sipped my cooling coffee, feeling real pain inside. Jean and Miller would pay for this. I tried to muffle my emotions. Anger, hurt, and anguish wouldn't help. I thought back to my work in the Far East, where old-style executives viewed business and life in multi-generational terms, much like Southern Europeans. When two families went to war, there was no reprieve until one was wiped out. But I wasn't a triad leader or mafia boss, just an ordinary man living an ordinary life. I had no superpowers or omnipotent allies. I asked for more coffee and pondered how to get revenge on a dying man. As for Jean, it was simple. Take everything she valued. First, I had to deal with Miller. He wasn't married to me, but he disrespected my marriage and family. My anger flared up again. At work, psychological evaluations revealed two traits. I was risk-averse and stubborn to the point of intransigence. These traits drove me now. I would retaliate regardless of the consequences, and not back down until one side was defeated, even if it was me. An embryo of a plan began to form. I called Clarence and asked him to find troubled women the Millers had helped. It was another fishing trip, but I was aiming big. In 2014, during a trip to Kenya, I joined a local team for deep-sea fishing in the Indian Ocean. I learned that to catch a marlin, you first catch small fish like bonito, use them as live bait, and then catch the marlin. That lesson gave me a plan. I drove home, did breathing exercises to calm down, and pretended I was in the same mood as before. Jean wasn't home, so I finished my tasks. Later, she returned with Dean and Kathy, and we grilled steaks and corn on the cob, made coleslaw, and warmed baguettes. I spent the day as a loving father and husband, but inside, I was a cynical fool. Cynical Adam decided Jean was doing damage control because her lover was dying. I was her backup plan. My time with Dean and Kathy was real, but my time with Jean was like a B-movie. Cynical Adam reminded me to keep this in mind during the divorce, and when looking for new relationships. The next few days were strange, living a lie and watching myself play a role. On a positive note, George and I sorted out the new trading organization, registered it in Singapore, and transferred the CA portfolio. CA was now trading at $16.33. After the roller coaster ride, we had more than doubled our investment and were looking at a threefold return. Given how easily I had adopted my cold, calculated persona, I became paranoid. I added security measures requiring a fingerprint and password, encrypted all my files and emails, and always turned off my laptop. I deleted all emails not from George without opening them, uploaded needed files to the cloud, reformatted my phone, and re-uploaded necessary data. I researched other interesting stocks and contacted potential investors from JP Morgan, confident that the layoff nullified my non-compete clause. On Thursday, Clarence delivered the ammunition I was waiting for. A flash drive containing information on 14 women the Millers had helped. The handover happened at a different coffee shop due to my heightened paranoia. The flash drive included brief bios and old photos. 5 women still lived locally. One, Layla, worked as an escort. I bought a cell phone, called her, and arranged to meet at a motel. Layla arrived on time, small, thin, and tattooed. "Show me the money," she said. I placed $200 on the bed and asked, "How do you feel about making 1,000?" She initially refused, but when I clarified that I wanted information, she agreed to talk. Layla recounted her story. She left home after school, ended up on the streets, and began selling herself for food and lodging. After a traumatic incident, she was taken to the hospital and then to Mrs. Miller's house, where she stayed for 6 months before leaving due to boredom with the rules. I asked if she experienced bullying at the house. She hesitated, then asked, "How much?" I offered $5,000. She negotiated skillfully, asking for $20,000 to help her and her daughter start anew. I promised her a job in Chicago if everything worked out, and her eyes lit up. "For real?" she asked, both hopeful and scared. I reassured her, and we agreed on a plan. We exchanged numbers, with her saving mine under the name Jerry. Phase 1 was complete. At home, I maintained my facade, and Jean seemed to buy it. She was too focused on the Miller Legacy project to notice much else. I gathered as much information as I could without raising suspicion. We cooked and ate together like old times. During breakfast, she mentioned she'd be busy with New Horizons House and that the grand opening was on Monday at 10. I already knew from the company website and social media. I feigned interest and subtly questioned her, learning the mayor and local media would attend. "Did they stop the chemo and radiation so Tony could feel well enough to attend?" she asked someone, probably Evelyn. She then sobbed slightly. "It's going to be a life-changing moment. Not if I could help it." My divorce papers were ready, awaiting permission to file. Illinois was a no-fault state, so it was a matter of irreconcilable differences. I started the day checking the SGX. Our stock had reached its issue price and was rising. A good start to Friday. I listened to WMA radio at 9:30, where Evelyn discussed the New Horizons House, praising its social responsibility and calling for community participation and donations. Then a hesitant caller broke the smooth narrative. Through sobs, she revealed, "Please don't believe the house helped anyone. It allowed Mr. Miller to misuse women." Evelyn denied it vehemently, defending her father. The caller continued, "He did, and more than once. I'm a strumpet now, thanks to your precious daddy. My name is Layla, and your father ruined me." The connection cut off, and the station went to a commercial break. When they returned, the host was torn between continuing the original interview and addressing the shocking revelation. Evelyn tried to explain it away, but the lines were ringing with listeners' reactions. Some defended Layla, while others dismissed her as trying to make a buck. Another caller, Rita, said, "Anthony Miller misused me too," adding more fuel to the fire. A married woman with children called in, sobbing that Miller had stressed her too and forced her to do things she couldn't refuse. She disconnected, leaving a long silence before the host, who sounded like he was crying, could speak. The public reaction was a mix of outrage and defense, turning a low-interest story into an emotional storm. I called Vicky, an old high school friend who works at the local newspaper and anchors the news for 2 regional radio stations. I asked if she had heard about what was happening on WMA and WTX. She had. I told her I was concerned because my wife works for MRE in the New Horizons Home Project. She wasn't sure, but said she would look into it, noting that if true, it would be the biggest misuse case in Springfield in 2 generations. By lunchtime, the story had quieted on the air, but social media and Twitter went wild. Initially, opinions were split evenly, but soon it became a fierce witch hunt against Miller. Thousands of women shared their misuse stories. Some were detailed, others just "me too," and some were graphic. The information went viral globally. I passed out with a massive headache, took Tylenol, and feeling dirty, took a shower where I broke down crying harder than I had since my mom died. I realized I had unleashed a firestorm that was now out of control. Nietzsche's saying about becoming a monster by fighting monsters felt apartment. All I could do now was hang on and pray. I picked up Dean and Kathy, made chicken stir-fry, and waited for Jean. She didn't come home, and her phone was off. We ate and played a board game. Jean finally came home around 10, looking devastated. "You heard?" she sighed. "Have you heard all the nasty things they say about Tony?" She collapsed into a chair. I handed her a brandy. "Yeah, sounds like your boss is a carnivore," I said evenly. "Where there's smoke, there's fire." "No, Adam, he's a good man. He would never do anything like this." "Time to get to phase 2, Jean." She looked up. "You don't know the man very well. You don't know me." I pressed on. "You and I have no secrets. We're husband and wife, so you know what I'm capable of, just like I know you." I held her gaze. "You may know Miller as your boss, but who knows what he's really like?" Conflicting thoughts played across her face. "No, he's a good man. He would never do that. I would know." "How do you know, Jean? He's your boss, your coworker. He could be hiding a million secrets. I always felt like he was hiding something. He's the kind of guy you wouldn't leave alone with your wife or daughters." She sighed. "And has he ever tried anything with you?" She turned white, and I pretended not to notice. No, never. How can you even ask that? She tried to be snarky, but ended up looking dumbfounded. Because you're a pretty woman, Jean. If what they say about him is true, he must be very immoral. She burst into tears, staring into her glass of brandy for answers she didn't find. She finished it and went upstairs, tiredly saying goodnight to Dean and Kathy. I heard the shower running. I finished my cognac and headed to bed, pretending to be half asleep when she returned. She was talking to someone, probably Evelyn, mentioning nightmare several times. She questioned why there weren't more women speaking out and acknowledged it wouldn't go away easily. She was right. She made a second call. "Hi, Tony," she said. I overheard snippets where she reassured him it was all a misunderstanding and would be resolved. I barely heard her move to the kitchen, but I caught her last words. "I love you too." I heard the microwave beep, and she probably snacked alone before bed. By the time she joined me, I was asleep. Saturday, I woke up first, made breakfast, and drove Dean and Kathy to sports practice. At home, I spoke to Vicky, who told me 4 women had come forward. Her sources said the mayor's office considered the project toxic and was distancing itself, as were civic associations. By mid-morning, the Attorney General announced a full investigation. I talked to George about business and my father about my marriage. He agreed it was irretrievably broken, but said Dean and Kathy would cope like many kids in the U.S. I called Jean. "Where are you? Evelyn, the company lawyers, and I are fighting these lawsuits." "Are you sure you should be involved?" I asked with concern. "The fallout could be significant." She resisted, as expected. That weekend, MRE had less than 20% of its usual attendance at the show. By Monday, the phones were ringing with canceled orders and the New Horizons opening was postponed. Monday, another woman came forward. She was married to a wealthy businessman and well known in the community. She claimed Miller misused her twice during her 8-day stay at the house. She left her lawyer's details for a class action lawsuit. By the end of the week, 5 things had happened. First, Miller was interviewed by the district attorney at the hospital, after which his condition worsened. Second, 3 of the 5 women testified to the police about assaults occurring about 5 years ago. Third, the media storm forced MRE to close its doors. Fourth, California stock passed $24, and I began selling shares, making back our original investment while retaining 2/3 of the stock. Fifth, my dad took Dean and Kathy out for the weekend. I bought a bottle of 2012 vintage Veuve Clicquot to celebrate with Jean. When I arrived home, I saw an MRE-branded BMW X5 parked next to Jean's Lexus. Inside, Jean was crying, and Evelyn was comforting her. "Ladies," I greeted them, grabbed 3 champagne flutes, and popped the cork. I filled the glasses and handed them out. They stared at me in shock. "Salute," I toasted, drank half, and burped. Then the shouting began. "Jean, you're divorcing me." I thought we were a family. Divorce papers lay open on the coffee table. "Evelyn, how could you?" "Adam, don't you care about your wife? Don't you love her?" "Have a drink. Jean, we're celebrating the end of an era." I finished my champagne and reached for the bottle. "Evelyn, first of all, I could, and I did. Second, I stopped caring and loving her when she became your father's strumpet." I knocked over my glass and toasted. "Evelyn, let's drink to your father's legacy. I hope he lives long enough to stand trial so the world knows what a piece of crap he really is." She turned white and collapsed. I turned to Jean. "Get yourself a lawyer. The kids will stay with my father until custody is established." Her eyes widened with fear, seeing a side of me she never had before. Evelyn dropped her flute, spilling champagne. They looked at me like I was a madman with a trigger. "Care for champagne?" "No, you left me alone so long I needed human contact," Jean tried to justify but couldn't meet my gaze. "I understand," I laughed humorlessly. "And how do you manage that now?" Evelyn attacked me again. "How many women did you sleep with while you were away?" "Men always want their women to be angels while they do whatever they want." "Don't think all men act like your father. Just because he ruined young women in marriages doesn't mean the rest of us stoop to his level." I stared at her, hoping she'd object. I leaned closer. "Your father is a maltreater, a criminal, a pig. He'll likely die before going to prison, but his reputation will be destroyed. His legacy project will never succeed. His money will be tied up in lawsuits. MRE will go bankrupt, and you'll have to change your name and move far away." She trembled and cried. I wished she was a man so I could unleash my rage. "Evelyn, you probably helped lure these girls like Ghislaine Maxwell did for Jeffrey Epstein." Her mouth opened in horror. No, it's all a lie. My father is a good man. I turned to Jean. You have 2 hours to pack and leave. If you're still here when I return, I'll call the press and invite them to interview you about your involvement. Screw you, she spat. I'll move out, but I'll hire a lawyer first thing, and then we'll see who gets what. 2 hours, I repeated. I drove off, but a few blocks away, the adrenaline caught up with me, and I had to pull over, gasping and shaking. After 15 minutes, I regained control and called my father. I told him about Jean's departure and asked him to keep Dean and Kathy with him. Jean could visit, but not be alone with them. We talked, and then I drove around aimlessly before getting gas and heading home. It was 10 o'clock by the time I returned. The house felt like a mausoleum filled with the ghosts of happier times. The silence was deafening, and I couldn't sleep. Socrates said that an unexamined life isn't worth living, but I avoided examining my psyche too deeply. I knew things had gone too far and couldn't be stopped. I feared what might happen if the situation went to court and decided to get Layla out of town to eliminate my direct connection. The next morning, I felt as tired as when I went to bed. After my morning routine, I had breakfast downtown and called the kids. They were fine, though Dean suspected something was wrong. Over coffee, I reached Layla. Did I deliver as promised? She asked. I confirmed she had. We arranged her flight to Chicago the next day. I had transferred $25,000 from my offshore account to one of George's, then to her new bank account. Layla was off to a job as a property management assistant set up by one of George's contacts. I was on my second cup of coffee when Vicky called. 3 women have sued Miller, seeking damages. The papers will be served on Monday. We talked for a while. She and the news editors were surprised by the timing and the way the story had unfolded. But given the current climate, it wasn't shocking. Once Layla, who claimed she was a courtesan, got publicity, others followed, similar to the Harvey Weinstein case. I spent the rest of Saturday with Dean and Kathy. I told them their mom and I were divorcing because she was having an affair with her boss, Anthony Miller. Kathy didn't understand, but Dean did. She slept with Mr. Miller, Dad? I nodded sadly. Yeah, they've been together for a while now. Kathy cried, while Dean remained unfazed. We went to the golf course with my dad and hit a few buckets of balls. Dean and Kathy used my old clubs and had a good natural swing. We had dinner at a Greek restaurant and then headed to bed. I returned to my quiet, lonely house and had another sleepless night. On Sunday, her parents called, hoping for reconciliation for the sake of the child. How can I reconcile with a woman who's been having an affair for years? I asked, especially with a maniac like Miller. They sighed, and I assured them it would be figured out in court. They were left with a shattered view of their daughter. Life went on slowly and painfully. Dean and Kathy moved back in with me, and my father moved in to help. My business gained momentum as George and I received positive feedback. Vicky informed me that a 4th woman had joined the lawsuit against Miller, but not Layla, which I found odd. I had a meeting with Jean's lawyers about property division. I had set up investment accounts for Dean and Kathy's education out of our combined assets, so they couldn't be touched. My last paycheck and payments from J.P. Morgan went to my offshore account. Her lawyer suspected a golden handshake, but had no idea how much. It was only a matter of time before they subpoenaed the HR documents. I offered Jean nothing, as she had a good job. She argued there should be at least $250,000 in cash and near-cash assets. I assured them it was lost on unprofitable stocks. Jean and her lawyer called crap, but I laughed. Take the deal, Jean, or I'll fight until you run out of money for lawyers. I'll cripple you financially. Why are you being such an idiot? She asked. I deserve half of whatever is left of our marriage. Go to your second husband and ask him for money. You had more of a marriage with him than with me. But hurry, he may not have any money left after those women get what they deserve. It dragged on for months. Jean's stance wavered from meeting to meeting. She claimed I made her relationship with Miller look more serious than it was, then blamed me for her behavior, then wanted to reconcile, and finally threatened to take me to the cleaners. Her lawyer said he'd get her back in the house immediately. I gave her my biggest grin. Be careful, Jean, or I'll expose your complicity in this. She turned pale. Try it and see what happens next. As I left the lawyer's office, I noticed Evelyn glaring at me. I smiled at her like one smiles at the walking dead. Her smile faltered. You should have stayed out of this, Evelyn. You reap what you sow. 2 days later, Layla was $5,000 richer. And the local newspapers, Twitter, and social media were ablaze with revelations about Evelyn Miller helping her disgraced father, Anthony Miller. The DA's office faced criticism for not arresting Miller or taking action against his daughter. In a media briefing, the DA's office said the investigation was still in its early stages, but the press didn't hold back, and another storm erupted. The public, still reeling from the Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein scandal, quickly targeted Evelyn. Miller was sued by 4 women, making me increasingly anxious and sleepless. Going to court was a huge risk and could derail everything. 6 weeks after my return from Singapore, the doorbell rang. It was Evelyn. "What do you need?" I asked bluntly. "Can we talk, Adam?" "No, I don't want to be associated with a carnivore like you." I closed the door, but she rang again, begging to talk. "Where's your entitlement, cow?" I thought, but said, "I don't think so. You just want to record me." "I promise I won't." "Good." Her eyes lit up, but I stopped her. "Put your purse and phone in the car first." I set my phone to record. "Okay, talk." She looked unsure whether to stand or sit, but eventually sat on the edge of the couch. "I know it's you, Adam. You created this nightmare." I stared at her without emotion. "Stop it, Adam." I remained silent, and she changed the subject. "Your claims about my father are lies. They need to be disproved." I laughed. "There's nothing I can do. It's up to the court now." "Please, Adam. I know you can stop this. Now that your world has collapsed, you want my help? Where were you when your father was with my wife?" Her face reddened. "Oh yes, you were helping, making sure she agreed to be your father's strumpet." We stared in silence. Finally she asked, "When will you be satisfied?" "Not until your family is completely destroyed, Evelyn." She shuddered. "There will be no stopping, no ceasefire, no peace." I spoke slowly, making sure she understood this wasn't a game. She realized the truth and fell silent, then surprised me by asking, "You want revenge on me? How?" She clasped her hands together, unable to meet my eyes. Staggering, she left and ran to her BMW. I watched her drive away, feeling both satisfaction and disgust at my cruelty. Though it was early, I wanted a drink. I spent the rest of the week in and out of law offices while working on new clients. George and I were completing due diligence on promising listings on the Hong Kong and Johannesburg stock exchanges. The 4 women's class action lawsuit against Miller was in full swing. The Millers, led by Evelyn and her attorneys, were trying to settle out of court. The DA struggled with prosecuting a man on his end of the rope, so we waited. The Millers had been nearly cleaned out, and the women received over $2 million each. This effectively marked the end of MRE. I needed one more thing to complete my revenge. So I went to the hospital and entered Miller's room, looking official and walking as if I belonged there. No one stopped me. I wanted him to know who had ruined him and his legacy. He lived for 2 more days. Evelyn had him cremated, and only 5 people attended the small gathering, including Jean. She wanted to take Dean and Kathy with her. I told her, I would see you dead first. "You would, wouldn't you?" she replied with a mix of fear and hatred similar to Evelyn's last look. "You ruined him, didn't you? All because he and I had a relationship? You went crazy and ruined so many lives," she cried. I laughed harshly. "You planted the seeds, Jean. Why didn't you just tell me you wanted someone else? We could have divorced, but you chose to neglect me." She admitted quietly, "I loved Tony. He gave me what I needed. With you, I felt like your job came first. Then, when we had Dean and Kathy, I felt even more neglected. I could have walked away, but I didn't. I played a recording on my phone." "Was it worth it?" I asked. "No," Miller wheezed. "You ruined everything I worked for." "It's your own fault, Miller. I screwed you up big time." "How did you find out about me using them?" he asked. I started laughing uncontrollably. "I didn't know, Miller. I thought I was making it up. But now I see why those women pursued you. It all burst open with one little crack." "Screw you, Carter," he panted. "Those women owed me." He tried to sit up. Jean collapsed to the floor in shock. I walked away, leaving her behind. When Emery sold assets to free up cash, I bought the house they were converting into New Horizons House for next to nothing. I announced I would turn it into a full-fledged shelter for misused women, renamed it Joy Carter House after my mother, and placed it in trust with my dad and the 4 women who sued Miller as trustees. They contributed to the project, and the media praised us. During the divorce, Jean got primary custody, and I paid alimony until Dean and Kathy turned 18. She could stay in the house but had to contribute 50% toward the mortgage. Alimony for her was zero. When she accused me of hiding money, I threatened her, and she backed down. She became very cautious around me. We eventually divorced. I bought a 3-bedroom condo so the kids could stay with me. I had them almost every weekend since Jean was busy selling houses. I missed them when I traveled regularly to the Far East, but overall, life wasn't too bad. I laughed at myself. Things were tough, but manageable. Jean's relationship with Evelyn ended immediately after I showed her the tape of my confrontation with Miller. I also circulated an edited version of the tape with her father's confession. This took on a life of its own. Evelyn left a couple of months later, and I never heard from her again. I met Layla in Chicago, whose real name was Leanne Roxton. She had cleaned up and was enjoying her work. "Did you know?" I asked. "It was like an open secret," she said. "No one admitted to the misuse directly. Everyone was afraid being kicked out on the street would be worse." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. She laughed. "I had no idea. I wasn't misused. I contacted a few women, offered them $5,000 to say they were misused." She glared at me, daring me to object, but I didn't. Rita French, the second woman I contacted, fell apart on the phone. She was the first to call the radio station when Miller's daughter was on air. The Me Too campaign started organically from there. "You could have made so much money," I sympathized. She shook her head. "By the time they sued Miller, I was in Chicago and out of the loop. But you gave me a good start, Adam. Thank you." My revenge was complete, and my actions felt justified. The Millers were destroyed like in a fictional saga. I learned lessons in revenge and executed them in ways I never imagined. Financially, things were improving. The business was growing, and George talked about me buying him out for his retirement. Dean and Kathy adjusted well, focusing on school, friends, and sports. Life went on. About 4 years after the divorce, Jean began dating an older man. They eventually married. Dean and Kathy said he was a nice guy. I remained single and wasn't seriously dating anyone, likely due to lingering trust issues. At my father's insistence, I started seeing a trauma counselor and began improving my life, but I still had a long way to go.